Sewing Works, and today I want to show you some of my favorite feet and show you how to make this darling little trick-or-treat bag just in time for Halloween. And I'm going to use a little bit different techniques than the We All Sew blog, but you can find this free pattern at the We All Sew blog to make your very own. So let's jump right in. We're ready to start appliquing, and the first thing we're going to do is the moon because it's in the background, and because this is faux leather, I'm going to use my open toe Teflon foot number 56 because this will allow me to slide on this sort of sticky surface a lot better than my clear foot or my regular 20 foot. If it was regular fabric, I would pick my 20D, and now I'm going to show you why. I'm going to do a blanket stitch. I've already adhered the moon with my 505 glue stick. Looks purple but dries clear. And so I'm just going to move my cat out of the way. I did have to make his tail's a separate part. 2 parts for the cat. And I don't really need to do this bottom side, so I'll probably start about here. Swap my foot over. Oh, and I need white thread. Swap that really quick. Okie doke. Get the back part of my bag out of the way. Then let me show you how I set this up on my machine. So I was using a straight stitch with a stitch length of 1.4, as you can see, to do all of the facial details, the mouth and the nose. I'll show you what I did with the eyes here in a minute. Kind of a fun technique I just tried today. Your blanket stitch is going to be found under your quilting menu. Oh, and you're getting quite the glare off of my screen. And we're going to choose number 1309. And it looks like it will be easiest for me to start on this side. I like to first tell it that I have a 56 on, which will change the image on my screen, and then I'm going to move my needle position all the way to the right. And you'll see how this is going to allow me to use that right toe as a guide around the edge of my moon. Let you guys get a little bit closer look here, and away we go. Okay, that's a little bit too far away. How about that? So you can see how it's almost just a needle width away from the edge of my fabric, that right toe. So the idea here is to have the straight stitching happening off the edge. The idea here is to have the straight stitch part where it comes forward to go right on the edge of the moon, and then the part where it jags in to be on top of the moon. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. The cat covers part of this, that's why. Okay, I did pretty good there. Now it's time to get the cat on. And I made my cat out of a glitter sheet, which has a glue already on it, but I don't have a hot iron right here handy. So I think I will go ahead and use my glue stick again, just to kind of put it in place. Get its legs. And before I really stick it down, I better get our tail. I love this glue stick. I can just hang out right next to my project and don't have to worry about overspray, all that stuff. Okay, I think I'm ready to stick my kitty down. And is my tail upright enough? I think it needs to be like that. So that's a little bit of that glue. You wait and see. By the end of this video, I bet that's all clear. Okay. I do not need my Teflon foot anymore, and I'm gonna go back to my straight stitch. So I'm gonna use probably my all-time favorite applique foot, which is a clear foot. We're gonna use number 34D. Because it has these fabulous registration lines to help me follow the edge of my fabric. Switch over to black. Let's see, I'll probably start around the head so it doesn't move on me. Let's start right here by the ear. So I can use this red line to sort of watch. Oh yes, I gotta tell the machine I've changed my foot. 30-40. To watch where I'm going as I come around here. And yes, I still have a fairly short stitch length. That's gonna help me to get into those corners right where I wanna be. Now this edge where I am kind of partially onto the moon, I can feel a little bit of that stick factor that the Teflon foot eliminates. So just gotta be careful that I'm getting even feeding as I come around that moon part. Oop. And a little, this is really going to be helpful with this fur, having that short stitch length. Now I want to talk to you about how I did these eyes, and here in a minute I'm going to show you that I use the glow-in-the-dark thread so that when you take this out in the dark or go into a dark place, these are going to shine. The next technique I want to show you is how I got my eyes of my cat. And the pattern itself, it calls for using green felt for the eyeballs, which I did use yellow felt, but I wanted to have my eyes glow in the dark. So I used a satin stitch in my machine to cover that yellow felt with glow in the dark thread. And I'll show you how that works here in a minute. Here is our Metler glow-in-the-dark thread. You can get this at the Sewing Works. It adds just that extra element to your sewing projects. And I had to do some testing on a scrap to get my stitch elongation where it needs to be. So if you have been a while since you took your My Bernina training, this might be a bit of a refresher. When I come into my decorative stitch menu, I find satin stitches in the 400 folder, and I use stitch 407 because it most closely mimicked the cat eye. Now, when you'll notice here, it's still altered to 11.3 millimeters and 7.3 wide. If I clear that out, you can see it was actually a little bit fatter and a little bit longer. But the first one I did, I made it too long. So the first thing I did was I came in here to the eye menu and found my stitch elongation button, which is going to let me make this little bead longer without taking any of the density out of that satin. And I bumped this up to 115. And that's when I got this first sew out. When I held this up to my cat eyes, it was a little bit too long. So after I elongated this, I then went back and shrank it to size, which involved shrinking it left to right and shrinking it, not that much, down, up and down. Let me show you what happens if I don't use the elongation tool to make that to 11.2. Let's clear that out. If I just went down to 11.2, it's actually not going to add any stitches in. No, I can't. I physically can't get to that specific spot, but that's okay. If I needed to make it longer that way, you see how the integrity of the stitch gets kind of crummy. Or in this case, it gets too tight and might cause me to have a jam. So if instead I use elongation, what that's doing is actually taking some of the stitches out when I shrink it, or if I go up, it adds stitches in. So that's going to keep my satin stitch integrity when I am expanding or shrinking. So don't forget about that great little tool you have to create some decorative motifs. If you're following along with the WeAllSew pattern for this adorable bag, you'll realize that this part they do with webbing, but the webbing I had was too chunky and fat to do a nice job on this bag. So I'm going to show you how you can turn fabric into a binding for the top of the bag and then create your own straps using the fabric. And I like to reinforce straps with a bit of fusible woven to give them that extra durability when you're carrying around something heavy. So I've already applied fusible woven to my two strap pieces, and I have my binding for the top of my bag right here. And I'm gonna show you this fabulous hot ruler to make my folds fast and easy for my binding here. So I need this to be a 1-inch fold in. When you are creating a binding, you need to cut your Aura strap. You need to cut the width of your strip 4 times the finished result. So I want a 1-inch band of binding showing on the front, on the outside and the inside of the bag. So I cut this at 4 inches. Same with my straps. They're going to be 1-inch straps, so I cut them 4 inches wide. So I fold this down to the 1-inch mark, and I just run my nice little iron right on top of that ruler. That's what it's made for. Make sure you guys can still see what I'm doing here. And this is the large version, which allows you to do 14 inches at a time. Almost all the way down. Then we'll do the other side, and we'll repeat for the straps. So this binding is going to fold right over the top of my bag where that raw edge meets, and so you'll just see a little bit inside and outside. Now I'm going to use what might be my favorite foot of all time, which is the number 10 foot. It's the edge foot for stitching in the ditch. Oops, don't need that on. And also great way to attach piping, sew handles, attach binding, so many uses for this foot. I use it all the time. If you don't own this foot, put it on your Christmas list. And so I'll tell the machine I'm switching to number 10. What this is going to allow me to do is I'm going to actually butt this strap. So these are the straps I made. Butt the strap, folded edge, into the flange and top stitch this edge. When I top stitch, I prefer to take my stitch length to 3. And when I'm using this foot, I'm going to bump the needle position over so that my needle is going to be to the left of the flange to catch my fabric. Perhaps you guys would do better with lights. Let's see if that will. There, that is a little better this time. Sometimes it causes a glare. So down we go. Just making sure that fold is lined up nicely. I always do the sort of open edge first to line that up and seal it, and then I top stitch the other side just to make it look uniform so that there's a row of stitching down both sides. Side number 1 is done. Now to mimic that on the other side. Now I'm going to repeat that process for the other strap, and then I'm going to use the same foot with the free arm to attach my binding to the top of my bag. But this time I will be moving the needle to the right. All right, we're down to the last steps here, and it's going to be time to attach our straps that we made. So I've got the top of the bag bound, and I'm probably going to measure this in, but I'm going to open up the inside of this binding with my seam ripper and stick this little strap inside of there, and then I'll fold it up and top stitch it so it sticks up. Some threads to clean up. Repeat that for both sides of both handles. And there we have it. It's all put together. Cute little bag. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope I gave you some great ideas for some future feet that might be on your wish list. And don't forget to take advantage of our sale. Thanks for joining me. See you next time. I just came into a dark room so you can see my cat eyes glowing. Pretty cool, huh?